My name is Frank Tadley. I'm a photographer. I live here at Appleton Mills, and I'm a fine art photographer. So I work on projects. I don't work on commercial stuff. I don't do weddings and things like that, which isn't to say anything bad about that. It's just not my style. I also do installations for museums and people. I do a lot of work for the Griffin Museum of Photography in Winchester and Magenta Foundation from Toronto. Basically, I went to NESOP, New England School of Photography in Kenmore. I was in the high-tech business for many years, 26, doing speech recognition. But that sort of went its own way and path, and I've turned to photography to fulfill my needs to express. I was in Vietnam. I was a medic in Vietnam, and I was able to get some camera equipment quite easily and cheaply. And so I started taking some pictures, and when I first came back, I did some more, and then I sort of put it aside as I got on with the other stuff and finished college and started working. And when I was working at Kurzweil Applied Intelligence, one of the speech recognition companies, there was a whole group of people there who were interested in art and things outside the work. And so we met, we talked, and eventually a bunch of us went to NESOP and took up photography. Photography is very interesting that way in that there's a large body of work out there to be seen and influenced by. I'm very fond of Paul Strand. I just believe his work is, especially with the black and white that you can see here. He has such a tonal range, but he also has such a feeling for his subjects. Robert Frank was another one. I've done a lot of work with the elderly and people and catching the moment. And Carter Bresson, his whole theory was about catching the moment. So lots of influences. Well, photography is interesting. There was a long time when it was not considered art. A lot of people looked upon it as a more mechanical, technical thing rather than artistic. Now, that's less and less, but it's kind of come back in a way with the digital business. So the reason I like to be a fine art photographer is expression, really. It's getting the story out. Whatever the project that I'm currently working on, I want to be able to go in depth and pursue that. It's not the same thing as a commercial venture. I want to pursue a body of work, variety in that body of work, but it's got to cover the range. It's got to have a feeling for the event or the people in it or the topic or whatever the project is about. Well, your style changes, particularly true in photography, your style changes a little bit based on the equipment that you have, which was getting back to the point before about whether it was an art or not, and people thinking because anyone could pick up a camera. It wasn't quite the same as painting, which does have a certain physical skill that you have to have that is not necessarily true in photography. The thing is, you need the same eye in photography if you're going to take good pictures. So basically what's happened over the years is the development of the technology. Different kinds of cameras, better quality imaging sensors, the lenses are getting nicer. But I still go back every once in a while and use the old field camera. This is a 4x5 black and white, or you can use color too, black and white field camera that produces very large negatives which have great grain and are excellent for enlarging. Here in the building, I'm actually president of the Artists Association for Appleton Mills. So I look after the gallery. I try to get all the artists organized, which is sometimes interesting. Also do the Lowell Open Studios. I'm also a producer at LTC. So we have a show. The building has a show that we have at LTC. So we've done one that's on the air. It's under the title Bohemian Rhapsody for now, but eventually it'll change more to the Appleton Mills Artists. The studio location, this is it. This is the live-in workspace So it's nice, the light comes from the right direction for daytime shooting. Over there, I have backdrops, and I have in storage downstairs, I have all my lighting and stuff. So computers over there, and you can see some of the printers around. So I have enough stuff here to be more than busy enough. What I don't have is access to a dark room. I still have all my equipment in storage downstairs, what I'd love to put together into a dark room, but I don't know that that'll happen anytime soon. So I make do with the film. What I do is I scan it into the computer and then print it the same way as you would print digital. In the studio, I have backdrops. I have different backdrop material, so that if I'm taking a portrait or something like that, we can change that. I can also put wires up like this and hang stuff on it for open studios. And this is one of my favorite printers. This is an Epson 7800. It does a good job of printing large-scale prints like that. Different projects along the floor. There's a lot of wall space here in the unit, but even so, when you talk about project works and you have 10 or 20 images for a project, the space really isn't quite large enough for all that. So we put different ones up. Some of these pictures you can see here, these were from my sister's community garden in New Haven, Egerton Park. She's been a member there for 20 or 30 years, I don't even know anymore. And so we went down one year every season. 4 times a year we went down to visit and took pictures of the park itself and people working there. That's my sister over there. And so basically these kinds of projects, long-term projects like this, connect with the people who are a part of the park, all the gardeners there. So we had a show there at their place. We also had my sister happens to be a botanical illustrator, and so we also had a show in the Griffin Museum in Winchester, juxtaposition of the photography and the graphic drawings she would do of plants and things like that. In the old days, with the canals, there were tunnels under some of the buildings, and the water would flow through from one canal to the other, turning turbines inside the building, which was used to generate power. And this giant wheel was in the basement, and you can see the turbine on the right, and the water would flow through it and spin it and then cause the wheel to turn and basically cause power to be generated for the building. So the building was almost self-sufficient. So this is a color version, a little bit more stylized. This is an old-fashioned technique called tintype. So it has a more antique look to it, or older technique, alternate styles. Well, the thing about promotion and selling is that can be a full-time job in and of itself. It helps if one had a gallery. I sort of have a relationship with a gallery in Hudson, New York. Part of Lowell Open Studios is to get people to come in and see the work. The gallery downstairs is available so people can come see the work. The sales they're not as plentiful as one would like. I do work for people if they have a particular task or it's something that they want photographed. So that's another way. But it's the marketing, and it's a full-time job. You got to make contacts. I have a website. You have to be shown around. You have to go to these juried shows. I've only lived in Lowell a short time. I've been here a year. The building, Appleton Mills, is new. It only opened April last year, so it's a little over a year and a half old. So I'm still learning the connections in town. Be nice to have a gallery show in here at someplace like Zeitgeist or something like that. I've been talking with them, and they're interested, but we have to put a show together. You make connections, you meet people, people come to see your work. How the town could help? Come on Lowell Open Studios and buy something. The Lowell Open Studio is a citywide event where artists open their studios. And in this case, I'll open this unit here that I live in because it's a live and work studio. And there's about 7 or 8 other studios in the building that will be open here at Appleton Mills. In the gallery downstairs, Artists League of Lowell, or as it's known as ALL, they'll having 12 or so artists in the gallery itself. And then around town, there's so many different places where you can go. There's brochures, you can find it online. If you Google Lowell Open Studios, you'll see a long list of both artists and galleries. The name of our gallery is Millworks, and it's online for the Lowell Open Studios. We don't have a website for it, but you can find it there. This panorama up here is from Yosemite. Went there on a field trip in 2010, that summer. It was a great time. And that was taken with successive pictures. And there's a program that you use to stitch it together with and make one giant panoramic and print it on the printers. You have to work. You have to work a lot. Basically, for a photographer, you have to take a picture every day. You have to really delve into it and not just take a picture. You have to understand it. You have to look at the framing. You have to look at the project you're working on. You have to see what you've captured. And so you want to get to a point where you're not just whipping your camera out and shooting off 100 shots. You're studying what you're looking at. You've got to have a feeling for your subject. You've got to think about your subject. You've got to frame it. You've got to make it so that it has both the subject's message and your message, because it's a self-expression of yourself as well. And part of that comes from how you're doing your art, what you're looking at, the kind of subject you choose. But then once you've chosen a subject, you've got to get the story out from the subject itself. So like Avedon's American West book, that's a really good book for looking at how he chose his subjects, how he went about traveling all across the country and finding the patterns and looking for these things and delving into it. The other famous one is Robert Frank's Americans. He did a very similar thing quite some time before. I think he did that in the 50s, I think. And he traveled all over the country and did some great work and sort of delving into the local communities everywhere, to the personalities of the people he was shooting. So you have to dig down deep and find the story and capture it. This particular picture, which was actually taken in Mount Auburn Cemetery, is an infrared. Infrared is a different light range. It's above visible light. And it has a different texture and feel. This was taken in the summer. So all this area that appears white was actually green on the tree, live photosynthesis material. And the heat and the energy that comes out of that turns into white on the film. But you notice the black on the street is still the same. So I just love the tone of this, the sort of etherealness of it, but also the image itself. It's this road that seems to be going, disappears into the background. Well, for my future plans, it's just continue finding a theme that resonates with me, trying to find the story that works. I like to do travel stuff. So this past summer I was in Philadelphia, I'm from Philadelphia originally. And so we're looking at neighborhoods down there. We went to the old family manse, looking at the houses that my great-grandparents lived in, stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting, and capturing the neighborhood now and stuff like that. So maybe putting that into some sort of project. As I was saying before, with the black and white, the pizza ovens, the tone, that's really about the tone, but it's also about what people see and don't see. In other words, you come into these places all the time to get something, but you don't really look at it, And so I just want to capture the tone of those ovens, the beautiful color of them in black and white, and then just sort of see how that works together.